After breaking down the world's best funnels, I've noticed 7 common mistakes that quietly kill sales. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to spot them and how to fix them so that turning your audience into customers becomes a lot more predictable and simple. So the first mistake is arguably one of the most common, one of the easiest to fix if you know how to spot it, and can have really one of the biggest lifts because there's not much risk in removing it. And that's unnecessary friction in the funnel. So friction is really anything that makes it harder for your customers or your prospects to take the action that you want them to take. There is good friction, but for the sake of this video, we're going to talk about bad friction. And in order to tell you how to spot unnecessary friction, I think it might be easiest to articulate it with a story. So one of my friends, Matt, built his first ever sales funnel. And it was for getting a quote for scratch repair, right? And in order to test it, he did something super smart. He handed his phone to his father-in-law, who was not tech savvy at all. And he said, can you go on here and just request a quote? And his father-in-law starts scrolling through the funnel. And at the very bottom, it says, call now or text now to request a quote. And then underneath that, there's this blue text that says phone number. But the problem was, when his father-in-law got there, he was like, where the heck is the phone number? It says phone number, but there's no phone number. And Matt quickly realized he doesn't see that the blue, in my mind, the blue means click, right? But in his mind, he's like, where's the phone number? So Matt changed that text from phone number to click to view phone number. So that's one example of friction in a funnel that you can find by giving your funnel to somebody with completely fresh eyes and just watching them go through it. But if you don't have somebody to give your funnel to, or if you just want more data than just one person kind of skimming through it, you can use a tool like Microsoft Clarity. I love Microsoft Clarity, more than some of the other competitors because it's free, doesn't slow down your site as much, and it just kind of does the job. But Microsoft Clarity records your users, and you can watch through 50 or 100 of these. As you start doing this, you'll start noticing these trends that then allow you to take a step back, form a hypothesis of how to improve it, and then test that improvement. I can give you countless examples of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% improvements inside of sales funnels by watching 50 to 100 recordings for a client and then noticing something. Like, oh, they got stuck on this question. Maybe that was worded weird. Or maybe they didn't want to give their information there. They were a little bit anxious, right? If you watched our last video on Carlton Dennis, we'll roll the clip. You saw this again and again.
These are just conversion killers. Just horrible. I just can't believe it. I'm roasting this one a little bit more than common. This funnel is making 8 figures and there's this many errors in it.
The second one is messaging related. And this also ties in perfectly to the third one because 2 and 3 build up what I call the bridge. The first part of the bridge, it's failure to speak to the real problem. Because a lot of people, they understand this and they speak to kind of the surface level problem, right? But that's often the faux problem. That's the tip of the iceberg. And there's all of this, extra pain underneath it that we don't speak to as marketers because maybe we don't understand it or we just forget to include it. And I think rather than explaining this, it's easier just to show you what I mean. So if we go to Dave Ramsey's site, I think he does this super well on his Financial Peace University sales page. Now, the bridge is one thing he's doing well. So the headline is the fastest way to beat debt. Maybe there's some pain there. He's not doing it a ton above the fold. I'd like to see some, higher up. But if we scroll down, let's look at this. It says, you think you're doing okay, but you're not. That's why you're here, right? You're in debt. You feel like a rat in a wheel, running and running, but getting nowhere. That's not okay. He's not just putting a knife in and saying, hey, you're in debt, but he's twisting it to get somebody to take action. Because if he believes in his product, which he does, and he knows this can help people, they need that pain to do something, right? People need pain to change. And the second one, he says, so why are you still stressed and in debt, right? He's again, twisting the knife on that pain. And throughout this page, he just continues to do this. But that's the first part of the bridge, is speaking to the problems. And you want this sprinkled throughout all of your copy, whether that's in your VSL or on your sales page. One hack that I've used AI for recently is giving sales call transcripts, like 50 sales call transcripts to AI, like Claude or ChatGPT or whatever LLM you use, and ask it, hey, what are the common pain points that my prospects have, to see some of those trends, right? That's one way that you can expedite the workflow. The second part of the bridge is speaking to their desires, right? So this is kind of the opposite of the first point. And Dave Ramsey, again, does this well. In the headline, it says build wealth, right? That's what people want. And when you go down, we see, help you become a millionaire. We call that a pretty amazing ROI. And then we come down here, it says, if you stick with us, which I like that wording, because he's not just saying, hey, just buy this and immediately all your problems will be solved. But no, it's realistic. If you stick with us, you'll be debt-free in 2 years or less. You can become a millionaire and live in peace and change your family tree, right? He's speaking to the desire, this, mountaintop experience that they'll get to if they buy this program and if they stick with it for long enough. So that's the second part of the bridge, right? And it's called the bridge because you're taking them from the painful problem to the desired situation, and the product is the path to get there, right? So that's why it's called the bridge. That's the third problem, is failure to speak to the desires of your market. The fourth one is one that's a little bit more technical. It's called the mere exposure effect. And I see this quite often, and I understand why, because I struggled with it in the beginning as well. You see, back in 2019, when I first made a funnel, my very first funnel, I was super proud of it. I was actually in Sam Oven's program. I had learned from him. I was building a VSL funnel, I had my landing page, my video page, my calendar page, my thank you page. And I was just so excited, right? I'd watched the program and I'd built it. But as I was building it, I got a little bit too excited. And I thought, oh, I can add this thing and this will look really good. And oh, this is super cool. Let me change the color here. And I got super fancy and I didn't listen to the advice of Sam Ovens and just model what had already worked. And it wasn't until a few weeks later that I got a message from somebody that I just met in passing that had seen one of my ads going to this funnel, that knew a lot more than me. He had been in the game for a long time. And he said, hey, I just saw your funnel. I'm just wondering how it's working with paid ads. I'm guessing not well, but luckily there's a few things you can do to fix it. And we got in a call and he showed me some of these things. And very quickly I realized, man, I should have just literally stuck with the plan from the beginning and copied what worked. And mere exposure effect basically states people trust what they've seen before. So when you're starting out, don't try and reinvent the wheel. My rule of thumb is until I surpass the success of the person teaching me, I'll just model everything they do. I don't need to get fancy until I've surpassed them, right? So that's my general rule of thumb. And this brings me into the fifth mistake that I see people make, which is getting outside of purchase modality. I was reminded of this recently with a client of mine named Patrick. So Patrick, part of his business is 3D kitchen design. And historically, he's had a funnel where basically you'd come in, you join the wait list, and then you'd get an email when spots opened up and you could book it. And that worked well, because he was always really, really supply constrained, right? He had more demand than he had supply. So he didn't want to do sales calls or anything else fancy because he only had 20 spots and they'd always sell out anyways. But then eventually he brought on a couple of extra designers, people that could take some of the workload that would allow him to do maybe more like 30 or 40 or 50 kitchens a month. So we thought, well, why are we doing this wait list? Maybe we should just let people book whenever they want, right? We'll make it more like a Shopify experience. The problem was people are not used to just going on a site and just buying a kitchen design, right? If you're going to spend thousands of dollars, you probably don't want to just land and be like, oh yeah, add to cart kitchen design. We wanted to test it because we wanted to see maybe this will improve conversions, but that was dead wrong. Conversions shot down a ton and we quickly realized that we either needed to go back to what we were doing before or change things slightly. And purchase modality essentially means that people like to buy certain things in certain ways, right? You can imagine like, if we use a similar example of a plumber, your pipe breaks, you Google plumber near me and the first site you click on and you go to it and it's like add to cart, leaky pipe or broken toilet. You'd be like, this is weird. I'm going to bounce and I'm going to go to the next one that has just a phone number. I'm going to call them, which is what we ended up changing this funnel to. So when you're thinking through purchase modality and you want to make sure you're not making the mistake of selling something in a really, really, really weird way, just ask yourself, how are people used to buying this? And start there. The sixth one is mispricing your products. And this really comes from not understanding price elasticity and price sensitivity. Some products are very price elastic, meaning you can stretch them. It doesn't break, right? Conversions don't change. It just stays the same. And some are very price sensitive, meaning an increase in price, conversions plummet, a decrease in price, and conversions skyrocket, right? So don't just fall for the trap of thinking, oh, more is always better. Raise prices, raise prices, raise prices. High ticket is the way. This is preached often. And I used to believe it too. But honestly, after running numerous tests in the pricing category, really what it comes down to is not conversion rate. It's not average order value. It's earnings per visitor. If you have an audience, if you're running ads, trying to get people into your sales funnel, you need to look at how much money am I making for each person that comes. And this is a pretty simple calculation. I'll add a calculator down below that you can use to punch in how much revenue you're generating and how many visitors you're getting. And it'll give you your earnings per visitor. And then if you run a price test, you can go back, punch that in, what that number was during the price test and see, does it increase? Test both prices, test lower, test higher, see what works, see what drives EPV, and you can use that calculator down below to test that. So that's number 6. The 7th is one that arguably will keep your conversions high for a long time. So if you've seen your conversions dip, this might be wise. And it's failure to introduce novelty. So I struggle with this one because I was in Sam Oven's mastermind for 2 years and it was always focus, 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 say no to all of these things. But even Sam understood this because probably every 6 months or every year and a half, Sam would notice funnel fatigue, right? All of a sudden, it's just a kind of a gradual, things stop converting as well. The video conversion rate goes down. Sales calls aren't coming in as fast, and the funnel is fatiguing. And it's because it's not novel. So Sam would then pretty much always do something brand new. He went from like a traditional VSL to this really fancy VSL that just shot up conversions, and eventually that dies off. And then I think he had one in the middle, and then he ends up doing this very simple one at the end. That's kind of the exact opposite of what everyone's doing. So he incorporated novelty. Another person who I think does this probably the best right now is Iman Gadzhi. Every quarter, he's launching a new challenge, right? With a new angle. And really, the offer itself has stayed pretty consistent. Obviously he'd update it, but it's the same core training with a new name, and he had a new challenge with a new angle, right? It's like the Matrix is going to get you, or, the World Health Organization is going to get you, or whatever it was, right? It's always a new angle. And this is why he's consistently grown year after year when most people get face fatigue. So if your conversions have dropped, think about how you can not change everything around, keep it simple, try and keep the offer the same, but how can you repackage it, and how can you incorporate some novelty into the funnel? So when people hear the CTA, they're not just like, oh, I've heard this before, I'm not going to click, right? It drives some curiosity. They click, the angle's different, and it gets them to take whatever action you want them to take. So these are the 7 mistakes I commonly see people make that hurt conversions, that if you fix, will help you convert more of the traffic that you worked so hard to get. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you'll enjoy this one as well, and I'll see you in the next one.